So welcome everyone for our second lecture on Bhagavad Gita chapter 10. Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusantatami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini. Prajvalito Jnanamaya Pradipah Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Parnaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetam Ridatuhe Namaha. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyah Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So as I said, we are with the second lecture on the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So this chapter is called as Vibhuti Yoga. Vibhuti indicating the glories of that Bhagavan, the glories which is everywhere around us, but yet we are unable to sometimes see this glories which is everywhere. So this chapter is really about, the power of that Lord, that Krishna, that Narayana, however we want to describe that Ishvara. And it is also about really the pervasiveness or the subtlety of that Bhagavan, which is there everywhere. So this Bhagavan is actually, if we think about it, is really is seen everywhere in this whole diversity of flora and fauna that we see. And this is really the chief factor in each and every one of us. And this uh, supreme being, without which none of us would ever exist in this world, is really what in this chapter we see the glory, the expressions, the vibhuti of that Lord. So we find that in this chapter, Arjuna actually feels extremely inspired with this fact that that knowledge which is there in the Vedas is now being sort of seen in person in front of him. And this actually, that visible perception of his is actually continues on into the 11th chapter. So, so this is the kind of the inspiration, the motivation by which this chapter actually starts off, and Krishna actually elaborates on this quite a lot. Arjuna actually inquires Krishna as to really how can I really see you? How can I keep in touch with this eternal aspect of you, O Krishna? Because he can, I mean, in some sense, that knowledge which Krishna is telling him is actually sinking into him, but yet, he needs proof of it, right? So that is what Krishna is trying to bring to him, that, and we all being Arjuna, he's trying to say that, well, you do see this world, you see the world in all its plurality, all the diversity, all the various forms of, human beings, animals, birds, plants, both the inert aspects and the animate. So inanimate in the form of stones, mountains, everything in this one. So all this, yet, how can you show me that you are there? How can you show me that you, the infinite, is there in all these finite aspects? How can you show me in all these beautiful forms, O Krishna? So that is what chapter 10 is all about. In 42 verses, he shows his beautiful glory. So, and then you will see that, and just to give you, sometimes, when we read a book, we always want to know what is the ending, right? So at the end, Krishna, you see that, that Krishna tells him that how, in spite of bringing everything to Arjuna, yet how we are not able to see him. So, this chapter ends with kind of a little bit of a despair on Krishna's end, saying that, how it is almost impossible for a teacher to uh, explain the ultimate. It's like, this is something my father would always say, which is, okay, you can take the horse to the pond, but you cannot make it drink it. The drinking aspect comes within us. So Krishna does everything to show him that whole thing, you know. And last time also we talked about a little bit, but which is that, in and through everything that is functioning within us and everywhere else. And with this, Krishna gives his example. Krishna doesn't give the example actually, but Swami Chinmayananda interprets it beautifully by saying that, we, in our kitchen, and even here it's quite hot, I'm using the AC. Everywhere I see the AC working, I see my refrigerator giving me the ability to eat the food which I can, this one. I see, I look at that only as a refrigerator, I look at my AC only as a AC, right? And that is how we also interact with the world, in its inert aspects. We interact with the whole world that way. We create our relationships. We have this connection with the luxuries, enjoyments, everything. We look at all this. However, we don't recognize there is something behind it. So just like how in the case of AC and in the case of refrigerator and everything, the one thing that makes these things work is the electricity, right? That is the power. That is really the power in its most subtle aspects, that we are not able to see it, but it's only because of that that this whole, we are able to enjoy everything that we can, right? So too in the whole world, I'm able to enjoy the beauty of everything, but yet I'm not able to grasp that there is a power behind it. And that is why these analogies are so good, which really helps us to see that connection. So that is the chapter actually concludes where Krishna, after giving all this knowledge, he just, says, okay, of what use is it to you to know all these diversities? I exist supporting this whole universe by a portion of myself. So that is how the chapter 10 finally concludes. And he says, yes, first, step one is I enjoy the world. And why is step one necessary? Because we enjoy the world today by looking at my connection with something. I enjoy my child's play because he's connected to me. I enjoy my grandchild's play. I enjoy because the grandchild is connected to me. Everything is because of that connection is what we do. So that is literally step 0. So step 1 is where I take myself out of the picture and I look at the whole world and enjoy the world for what it is. I really can, maybe if I want, I can even feel the snow. I can feel the water. I can feel through my eyes. I can not. I can see through my eyes. I can hear through my ears. The beautiful music. All this is the beauty of the Lord. So that is literally the step 1. Step 2 is I try to analyze through it and understand the power behind all this that makes it happen. So that is that to that level is where Krishna wants to take us to. And finally, at the end of the chapter, he says, give up all these names and forms, okay? And just focus on me. I am that substratum. I am that power. I am because of which and everything the world is. So I am that adhishthanam, or you can say even I'm that alayam, I'm that home, I'm that abode. All these things in chapter 9, we saw that build up. But here, finally, he says, I exist supporting this whole Jagat. That is by Jagat Karanam, Jagadishvara. Why are these names? Because I exist supporting that entire universe by a portion of myself, that amsha. So that is the aspect that we need to reflect upon. And that is where this chapter 10 pushes us through to look at it. So just wanted to give a short synopsis of how this chapter 10 is building up to give you the whole summary of it. Any thoughts or any questions? Anybody wants to share anything more on this? So here you will see this in some form or the other, you will see that relationship that Krishna is trying to establish between the mortal self, mortal self Arjuna, and the immortal the self with the capital S. He tries to establish this relationship also. So the small mortal self is the one which is sort of conditioned by all these koshas, when I say koshas, the koshas are the layers, the pancha koshas, annamaya kosha, pranamaya kosha, manomaya kosha, vijnanamaya kosha, and anandamaya kosha. These are the things by which we as a finite self, function in this world. And because we are limited, so this is the thing about it, because we are limited by these 5 things, we function in the world based on how we are what the kind of vasanas we have gathered, what kind of impressions we have gathered. Whereas that whole big capital self, Krishna's, that is reflected and is functioning in the whole world through this total mind and intellect. And that is this Ishvara principle. So in his limited form, Krishna is that Ishvara, which is functioning through each and everything. So if we can understand that idea of who I am and how I am part of that whole thing, whole Ishvara, then we can really understand how I can actually subdue that ego of myself, because I'm part of the whole thing. And this part of it is where Krishna is trying to slowly get us out of it. So we kind of create our own world through our mind and intellect equipment, right? And through this, we are interacting into this world with our own limited view of the whole world. So Krishna wants us to drop that aspect of it. He says that, how we are part of the whole thing. So let's really dissolve that so-called perception within us. And that is where, towards the end of this lecture today, we will have this discussion on Viveka. I had posed this question to everyone to last time on what Viveka is and how that is a crucial aspect, which is really, really necessary in for us to progress into our next level of evolution, which is really dropping all those things which we are so attached to and which are really impermanent. And that needs to be dropped in order to get to the permanent state. So that is something to look forward to here. So last week, we talked about this connection in the second half of the three parts of Bhagavad Gita. And we quoted this three verses, which is this from seventh verse, from seventh, fourth, fifth, and sixth. Each one, first, where Krishna is explaining how, if you look at his nature is two parts. One part is the part that we're all familiar with, which is a finite part. And again, using the same example of the AC or refrigerator. The part which is practical and usable for us is this a hard case, right? So with the fridge, you see the shape, the form, and the function. All that is what we see. And that, Krishna says, is actually my one part of it. And just to kind of, it's not that one is inferior, like the word which is used in one of them is inferior. What he's trying to bring about that inferiority part of it is to say that, hey, we are all so focused on this functioning of things, but I want to take you one step higher. So that is why he breaks it down into two parts. Part one, which is a part that you're all able to see, Bhumira Punalo Vayu, Kammano Buddhi Revacha. That is all the part that you're interacting with. But there is another part of it, which is my higher thing. And that is where he brings this example of the pot, the various pots and everything, which is to say that ultimately all these pots are made with nothing but mud, right? So too, for each one of us, it is the power of who we are. That is the ultimate part of it. Everything else you see is only the functional aspect or the nama and the rupa part of it. So that is where he's saying the whole universe is just a nama rupa, and they all have been created from me. And that is where I am the source and the resolution. Just like how the pot can be broken up into the mud and the mud can be shaped into other things. So too, he says, Etadyo dini bhutani sarvani tyupadharyam aham kritsnasya jagata prabhava pralayastata. And then he brought this example of Matta Parataram Nanyat, Kinchidasi Dhananjay, Mai Sarvamidam Protam, Sutre Mani Gana Iva. So all these things are nothing but held by that power. So he said, he brought this. And this superb simile, we can actually see in all these beautiful forms where we can, here I brought in some examples of Niagara Falls and Grand Canyon so that you'll be able to relate to it even more, which is how all these creations are the vibhuti. And so that is why this whole chapter is actually called as Vibhuti Yoga. And these expressions are necessary for us each day to really understand that power or the mahima of that Lord. So something that we can all probably do every day is, to pick one thing in this universe. Every day we can take one thing in this universe, which is which really impresses you the most. It could be anything. It could be the smile of a child, the smile of a baby, or it could be something which is something that somebody did really well. Could be anything. And kind of make a note of it and look at that as, okay, this is a vibhuti of that Lord. It is because of that Lord that I'm able to enjoy this, something like that. So the whole thing that ultimately in 10th chapter, what Krishna is trying to drive is the world is not separate from who we are. We all are really coming from that world, from that Lord himself, But unfortunately, we live in this world as how I have perceived this world. So that is why those steps that I mentioned is necessary, which is really taking myself out of the picture as me viewing the world, but looking at the world as is, as it is there. So in Shloka 1, we see Krishna, uh, again, becoming, a proud teacher. And really, when I say he's a proud teacher, because he sees that willingness in Arjuna to learn even more about the creation, about really learning more about himself, and that is the infinite self or Paramatma. He sees that, and therefore in Shloka 1 we saw that where Krishna says, again, I'm repeating this again, punaha punaha vacha. He's trying to say this, bhuya eva mahabhaho shrunume paramam vachaha yatte aham preyamanaya Bakshyami hitakamyaya. So he uses these two adjectives, Priyamanaya. Priyamana, one who is so delightful, one who's so delightful for me and who is so happy to hear this knowledge. And the second thing, he describes him as somebody who is such a great well-wisher, hitakamyaya, wishing only, for some, he has only the goodness of heart towards Arjuna. So, such a beautiful, again, teacher-disciple kind of a relationship here. You see the student completely in tune with the teacher, and the teacher just so happy to share this knowledge, the supreme knowledge, Paramam Vachaha. He feels that Arjuna is really, really ready for that highest knowledge. So, he first, of course, praises Arjuna Mahabaho, and then he says, Shrunume Paramam Vachaha, again, listen to this beautiful thing that I'm going to tell you. So then in Shloka number 2, he starts to explain about uh, the glories, and earlier, he said that, he wants to explain. Now, why does he want to explain? So trying to say how, the cause and the effect, everything really comes from him only. And he tries to also wants to explain about how the greatness of this knowledge is such that even the great Sapta Rishis, they really do not know, but do not know from the point of view to say that it would be hard for anyone to fathom this knowledge, So that is why he says this, Name viduhu suraganaha. So, Prabhavam, na maharshayaha. Prabhava means again the glories, or Prabhavam here he says origin, and about the fact that, he's Adihi. He, we always want to know the cause of something, where did God come from? This is kind of a standard question when the kids really want to talk about, where did Krishna come from? Where did Rama come from? So he tries to explain this, my origin, Name Viduhu Suraganaha, my origin, neither the horse of the heavens nor even the Saptarishis can know it, because it's so subtle, so sukshma, But aham adihi devana, I am the source for all the devas and Maharishis in everywhere. So when I myself am the cause of all this, how can the devas and everyone know this, right? And Swami Tejomananda gives this beautiful example of, for example, a couple, as they grow older, they celebrate the 60th birthday, okay? And sometimes, of course, there's a great significance of 60th birthday, which I will not go into. But the point is sometimes in the 60th birthday, they again exchange garlands and everything. They go through the marriage ceremony, how it was before. because the child would or the children may never have seen their parents' wedding ceremony, right? Obviously. So, so to here, for example, the cause of the whole universe, how would we ever know about it, right? It is impossible to know it because the universe is always there. So, aham adihi hi devana, I am the source of all the devas. And me being the source, I can never really die, right? I'm always there. So I'm the source, I'm the changeless. And any change is the one which has a beginning and an end. But the changeless can never have it. So a cause has to be something which is changeless. And that changeless substratum is I am. And this is something which is very, very difficult for even the greatest of the munis to completely grasp this. And that is what here he says in Shloka 2. And then in Shloka number 3, which we just started doing last time, he says he's now, after, the Shlokas 1 and 2, here he's setting the stage to again explaining the greatness of his knowledge, the power behind, the behind that message. But here in chapter 3, he now explains a little bit about the nature of himself. He explained in the previous one that he's Adihi, right? So here he's explaining even further here. He says, Yahamam Ajam Anadim Cha, I am the unborn and the beginningless. Ajam, unborn, beginningless is Anadi. And how do people know him though? It's great to say I'm unborn and beginningless, but I need something to know, right? So he says this entire lokam, this entire world that you see of names and forms and everything, I'm that, I'm the Lord of the whole thing. Veti Lokamesham Maheshwaram. Know me, Veti, know me as the Lord Maheshwaram, Lord of this entire universe. Asam Mudaha Samartheshu. Once a person knows this, that person is now not deluded. So, in other words, he's trying to say that, we are all deluded creatures here. We're living in the world of illusion. We are constantly, not only are we deluded, but whatever actions we do are deluded actions. We are interacting with the world only through the perception of who I think I am and who I think the world is. So, no wonder that we get into issues, right? So, asamudha, but if I know these two things, uh, and I really have understood this, I can be somebody who is asamudha. I'm completely, I completely understand the nature of the world. I completely understand and accept the reality of the world, not the reality as the way I understand it. And such a person, sarva papai pramuchyate, is liberated from all sins. Um, the second I know something, I will never commit any mistakes, So, for example, if I really understand that all of us are one, automatically I will develop a compassion and love. And because of that, my words, through my thought, action, and my words, I will automatically uh, be alert and treat everyone with compassion and love, right? So automatically, I'm actually get to a state where I'm liberated from all sins. I may have committed a lot of things in the past, but the second I realize this, I will start to be a good person, right? So, so that is the assurance that Krishna is saying here. Yomam ajam anadim cha veti loka maheshwaram asam mudaha samartyeshu sarva papai pramuchyate. So what a beautiful assurance that he's trying to give here. And in one shot, you can see how Krishna is sort of lifting Arjuna from the world that we live in, the real world according to how we look at it, to that really the absolute real world. So it's all again, in our own mind. In our own mind, if I'm convinced about it, if I'm able to accept it, I can actually do it. So then you see, Krishna is really uh, placing a lot of emphasis on this sadhana chatushtaya, and we will be coming to some of these other qualities in the next few shlokas here. But this is where we left last time about viveka, and I was wondering if anyone has anything to say about it before we go into a little more discussion of viveka here.
Harvom, it's a Sat Asat and Atma Anatma.
Correct.
So, and the Nicha Aniccha Vastu.
Correct. So that is the
Discrimination.
discrimination, and I have here, which is coming up soon. So basically, Gita really places a lot of emphasis on this quality of viveka or discrimination. So it is, as Anant said just now, it is the discrimination between nitya and anitya, which is real and unreal. Okay. And sat asat. Sat is truth, asat is the opposite of truth. So, what is real, what is unreal? And Krishna, you will see in this chapter, he really places a lot of emphasis on this aspect of devotion. And when we start to actually start to listen more and more about this aspect of the glories, we start to develop automatically a devotion, a bhakti in our own hearts. And we begin to realize at that point that everything in this world is, has a beginning and has an end. So today, for example, we get so caught up in our own stuff, right? Our phones, starting with the phone, for example, we don't realize as soon as we get the phone, we buy the phone and we start using it, that this phone is going to die someday, And I've been observing this more over here. Quite a few of my things are already dying, what I got from US, and I have to, refurbish my gadgets and all this. And so we begin to realize that at the end of the day, everything has a beginning and an end. But then there is something which doesn't have the beginning and the end. What is it? So the realization first for us has to click in our minds that everything and anything and everything that I'm interacting in this world is not a permanent thing. And this, of course, can happen only through vichara, viveka. I need to first make a list of the things that I'm attached to. Then I have to come to a kind of a understanding that this is not going to be there. And then when I start to do it, I will see that slowly my own attitude changes, my own relationship with the objects and the people around changes. Like today, for example, our reactions to situations are depending upon whether it is conducive to me or non-conducive. Something which is conducive to me, I'm very happy. Something which is non-conducive, I become unhappy, right? But if I start to realize that these situations are also temporary, today it has come to me because it is trying to teach me a lesson, but tomorrow it's not going to be there. So slowly and slowly, I start to develop that discriminative power. And that discriminative power, the enhancement of it, is what ultimately leads me to recognize that power behind everything. And I start to appreciate the glories and really see Ishvara is there in the form of all the glories in front of me. So that is the minute I start to realize this, slowly my own ego my own ego, my sense of my as an actor in any situation, for example, and my ability to recognize the person with whom I'm reacting, each one of this slowly starts to dissolve. And I realize that ultimately it's nothing but, at the end of the day, it's all Ishvara's doing here. So when such a person, when that sense of doership and enjoyership is lost, automatically there is no kind of papa which can happen, right? So our sins get dissolved. So that is why this nitya anitya vastu vivekaha, that is the definition from Tattva Bodh, which really is such an important aspect. And Vivek Chudamani, of course, Adi Shankaracharya goes even much more in detail about this thing, but this is the very first book, first Vedanta book, which is Tattva Bodh, and he starts off with this Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. Right off the bat, he starts to explain about this aspect of what is Nitya Anitya. And in that, actually, last time I mentioned about how this is the book here, which is Tattva Bodh. From that is where I pulled up these 5 things, which are the 5 things where we need to develop that viveka, the Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka can be broken down into these 5 things, which is Amsha Amshi Viveka. Okay, what is one part and what is really the whole thing? So, for example, we are always um, enjoying only a part of the whole thing. Like, for example, let's take happiness. Okay, uh, we the minute standard examples, gulab jamun. We take a gulab jamun and we enjoy it, right? Now, this is only a small, small, small part of the happiness of a huge amount of happiness, which is nothing but our own self. I am that happiness, but I don't realize that. I enjoy the gulab jamun and I think that is giving me a happiness. So it's only a portion of my own happiness that I've superimposed on that gulab jamun and I'm enjoying it. Okay. If I can understand that concept alone, that is this Amsha Amshi Viveka. Okay. Um, if I can understand that that is the way I'm enjoying all these objects in this whole world, where I've superimposed my own happiness, then I'll develop that viveka, that discrimination, and start to look for that bigger happiness. So that's part first one. Second one is means and goal. Today, I pay so much attention to my security, right? Security is needed, no question about it. But our actions are driven by how secure I am. Okay. Now, security is only a means, it's not my ultimate goal, but I spend so much amount of time on that. So that's the sadhana sadhya. Sadhana is the means, sadhya is the goal. So I need to focus on what is that goal. My goal is moksha. My goal is liberation. My goal is trying to get myself out of the situation that I am today. And again, these are high level concepts, right? My goal is today to bring myself out of the world I am in, or the thinking that this is who I am. I'm thinking about how I'm interacting with this world. That is how I I've looked as my goal today. But my goal is much bigger. My goal is to recognize my infinitude. I am that infinitude, but I have recognized myself today as a finite. So that is the second major viveka that I have to constantly start acting in this world. The third one is good and the pleasant. Shreya Preya, Kathopanishad. Shreyascha Preyascha, that wonderful shloka, where we tend to gravitate towards only something which is always pleasant. So we don't recognize that I need to gravitate towards something that is good for me for the long term, not pleasant. Pleasant things are, if I'm constantly looking only for things which I like, and that is the Shreya and Prayer, then I will always be disappointed, because it will not, all what is good, what is pleasant for me today may not be pleasant tomorrow, right? So I need to constantly focus, push myself to see what is good in things. So every situation gives me the choice of being pleasant and being good. Again, simple examples we can use. I just want to use simple food example. For example, we talk about this bitter gourd, right? So bitter gourd may be bitter for me in terms of my taste. I mean, this is for a person who doesn't like bitter gourd, okay, who doesn't enjoy bitter gourd. But in the long run, the um, the uh, the the goodness that is there in bitter gourd. I don't want to use the word chemical here, because chemical people may look at it as, oh, chemicals pollute, right? That way, but the ingredients that is in bitter gourd is probably good for my health. So, another example, when we go to the doctor says, if my sugar level is too high, to give up sugar. But then I like to enjoy the gulab jamun because it's very pleasant. It's good for my thing, but in the long run, it's not good for me, right? So that's the good and the pleasant. And self and non-self, Atma, Anatma, Viveka. Anand touched upon this aspect on the eternal and ephemeral. So self and non-self. Today, I look at myself as the uh, most important. But actually, this ego is a creation of my own mind and intellect. And mind and intellect itself is inert. Western psychology, Western consciousness study will not accept this. But that is what it is. Even the mind and intellect, which has created my ego, or which has created myself here, is the anatma. But I need to give up that and look at Atma. And eternal and ephemeral, which is real and unreal, again, my own perception of the world. So these 5 things are the things where in the 10th chapter, you will see how Krishna explains about the beautiful glories of the world, but he also actually goes into the subtle manifestations. But let me take stop here for a second and ask, is there any questions,
Yeah,
or does
on,
this word Viveka, yeah, go ahead,
carry
Meena.
on. Yeah, so I did not understand the first part, Amsa, Amsi, Viveka.
Uh-huh.
I
As
get
Yeah,
you what you said about Amsa, Amsi. The rest I understood. Amsa, Amsi.
sure. I'm sure. So Amsha and Amshi is a very, very uh, powerful concept. And let me just take a work example, okay?
Mm.
If I'm working in a company, it can be anything, an IT company or in the chemical company that I was working in. Uh, if you are working on a small project that has been assigned to you, okay,
Mhm.
and I try to do the best in that project, but uh, if I don't do my best in that particular project, it's going to affect many other things which the entire company is working on. Okay.
Mhm.
So I need to always keep in mind that what I'm doing is a small part of a larger whole picture that needs to be thought about. Okay. So if I'm focused only on a very, very small, of course, I have to focus on the small part and do it very well. That is very, very important. But if I think about how much that small part is going to give me happiness, and I think that that small part is is the whole part of it. I'll actually give you another beautiful example. I don't know how many of you have read this beautiful book called Who Moved My Cheese? If you have not read it, it's a very small booklet, okay, maybe just less than 100 pages or something.
I have read that, Harvam.
You read that book, right? And I mean, it's amazing. So it's a story about these two rats, okay? These two rats, they find this big mountain of cheese, okay? From a rat perspective, even a small, big piece of cheese might look like a big one, right? So these two rats, they find this cheese, and one of the rats, it starts to bite into this cheese, and it thinks that that is the whole world, and he thinks this cheese is going to last forever. Okay. The second rat, he is a little more smarter. He recognizes that this cheese is not going to last long, and he needs to do something about it. So this first rat looked at that whole mountain, thought that is the whole thing. Okay. The second one knew that that is only a small part of a bigger world that he needs to think about. So this is what the part and the whole is, how I look at this. Anybody wants to add to it, or go ahead?
Okay.
Does that make sense, Meena?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That
So
exactly.
the point about is how our view of the world needs to change. If I'm focused on only a small, and this is, I'm actually, I mean, we can go on for a long time just to discuss this aspect. Today, for example, uh, and I wanted to actually touch upon this aspect of this Viveka being so very important in the role of mental health. Okay. So when we look at this Viveka or discrimination today, it is because of, say, racial discrimination, economic discrimination, um, families, maybe caste discrimination, so many things, is why there is a lot of mental health issues. Okay. But the same discrimination, I want to look at it differently, which is for us also, like let's take the social media, right? In social media, one kid puts a picture of himself or herself. Another kid looks at this picture and makes his own conclusion out of it. So you see how much social media has now caused me to use my discriminative power, and because of which now mental health issues are becoming higher. Okay. So this discrimination is such an important aspect uh, because of what it does to people, you know. So Amsha, Amshi, Vivek can be thought about in those ways. I'm actually, all these caste and racial, all this is just barriers which prevents me from knowing who my true self is.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So, and this is a very important aspect, which, like in the 10th chapter, in this upcoming shlokas from 4 to 6, you see, apart from the gross manifestations, what are the subtle aspects which we need to be aware of? So, in shloka 4, he starts to first speak about that Ishvara's subtle expressions. And later, of course, he will touch upon the more gross expressions, gross in the sense, things which I can see through my five senses. Okay. And in 7th chapter, like we talked about before, this, he had described the lower self, the apara bhakti. So out of which one of the eightfold prakriti, he talks about the mind and intellect. So that is, in some sense, he brings in a different way here. बुद्धिर्ज्ञानमसम्मोहः बुद्धिर्ज्ञानमसम्मोहः क्षमा सत्यं दमः शमः Kshama Satyam Dama Shamaha Sukham Dukkham Bhavo Bhavaha Sukham Dukkham Bhavo Bhavaha Bhayam Cha Bhayameva Cha Bhayam Cha Bhayameva Cha. So he says Buddhi, which is the referring to the intellect, or the capacity, actually, the capacity to discriminate between this, between real, unreal, all the five things that I showed in the last thing here. So it's a capacity to understand subtle things. Then jnanam, which is the capacity to gather knowledge, vidya, and to store it in our own memory. So that is the jnanam. So these two things, and then asammoha is the ability to wade through the and especially today, this is an important science. Data science is all about that, right? Data science is where you're taught how to look at this big data and make reasonable conclusions out of it, right? So asammoha is the ability to wade through a lot of information, which is gathered through this use of buddhi and jnanam, right? And then kshamaha, which is the ability of the mind to, it's also called as fortitude, which is ability to discriminate between the things that are told to me, whether it's in the form of praise or whether it's in the form of abuse or anything. The discriminative power within myself to look through what people are saying and understand the essence of what is being said. That is Kshamaha. So Satyam, what is Satyam? Satyam is the utterance regarding what one has seen, heard, and felt oneself. Okay. Again, Kshama is the fortitude, is the ability to deal with those things. Satyam is to see the essence. Okay. And Damaha and Shamaha is again the part of the Sadhana Chatushtaya, the fourfold qualifications, which is the ability to make the right decision based on what I see and what my mind is trying to deal with it. So Dama and Shama, we have talked about this before also. And then Sukham, Dukkham is happiness and sorrow. Bhavod Bhavaha, which is Bhavaha and Abhavaha. Okay. Birth and death, or existence or non-existence. So that is the Bhavaha in this one. And Bhayam and Abhayam, fear and fearlessness. So all these things are also, he's trying to say, these are creations, adhyatmic creations, which are very, very subtle. And that is why the word Viveka, we went through quite in detail about it, because the ability to grasp all these subtle aspects of it. So that is what he's describing in Shloka 4. And then Shloka 5, he continues on to describe some more of these qualities. Ahimsa samata tushtihi. Ahimsa samata tushtihi. Tapodanam yasho yashaha. Tapodanam yasho yashaha. Bhavanti bhavad bhutanam. Bhavanti bhava bhutanam. Matta eva pritag vidaha. Matta eva pritag vidaha. Again, some more of these qualities and continuation from 4, which is ahimsa. Ahimsa, again, it is not just in deed, in the action, but it starts all the way from the thought and how the thought translates to a word and word to action. So ahimsa, from non-cruelty to others. Samata means samam, maintaining that equality with everybody, equanimity or even mindedness. And then tushtihi meaning completely satisfied. Again, a quality of the mind, So tushtihi, satisfaction. Tapaha. Tapaha is again a word which keeps coming constantly in Bhagavad Gita in different chapters. It's the act of disciplining the body through self-control of the organs. And just yesterday, Monday, Tuesday was Ekadasi, right? Ekadasi, which is, and this time it was a Nirjal Ekadasi, which is the ability to remain for 24 hours without eating anything and even drinking. Of course, a little amount of water is allowed because to prevent your body from dehydration. So these are things which are being prescribed again as means to discipline our sense organs. So tapaha, an important aspect. Danam, which is again distribution of wealth according to one's own capacity, the ability to give. Yasho, yashaha, yashaha and ayashaha, which is um, uh, you know uh, the ability to fame and infame, fame and anything which may come to us. So opposite of fame, which is ayashaha, and bhavanti bhavat, which is all these yashas. So all these bhavanti bhavat bhutana matta eva pritag vidaha. These are all basically all different qualities, and these also arise from me. So this is all these qualities which he talks about, which are also the subtle aspect of him. And again, it's Krishna's way of teaching where he knows that in the beginning itself, sometimes we like to, what do you call that? There's a term which front load. He's front loading all these qualities because he knows that in the beginning of a chapter, there's a lot more interest and attention that he can create. And therefore, he brings all these subtle aspects up front to say that these are also my creations. Okay. So we'll stop here and we'll continue with, I know I was hoping to do the sixth one also. Sixth one has a little bit of a different flavor again. So we'll do that next time. But any last minute question or thoughts?
Hari Om. Actually, the way I was, as you were explaining, I was reflecting on actually the shloka too. And it was like Bhagwan is saying that God and the gods of the heaven, the devas and the rishis, they also don't know my origin. They don't know anything about. But what got me thinking was, once they have attained that, once they have the rishis and the mahatmas, and then once they have become one with the Lord, there is no beginning, there is no end. So it doesn't really matter at that time for them. I mean, it's like once we have become one with God, there is no beginning, there is no end. We are just at we are the dhuli of that Lord's, at Lord's feet. So that was what that just got, I was contemplating on that as you were explaining about the rest of it. Yes, everything has come from him, but because of our inability to realize that the Lord is the substratum of everything, we see nama, rupa, jati, niti, we do so much, we get lost in all of these world of objects and world of illusion. We take this illusion to be so real that we are unable to see the substratum behind all of that. That is what I just got lost in this shloka too, as you were explaining the rest of it, and my mind was stuck on this, that how can we, so thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're right. And in that sense, like what you were saying, the aham adihi, the substratum, the changeless. I mean, all changes can happen only from a changeless aspect, right? And so here he is, what he's trying to say is, I'm the source from which the Saptarishis have come. I'm the source for the hosts of the heavens. So how can they know me, right? I'm the causeless cause of the whole thing.
Exactly.
That can be interpreted in that way. Another thing to interpret it is this knowledge is so profound, so subtle, that even the Saptarishis who are evolved beings, even they may not necessarily know my ultimate, my pure, infinite self. You know?
Yeah. I mean, we have heard again and again where they themselves have needed the Lord's help to. It's like, we have heard stories where Brahmaji has needed Lord Vishnu's help or Lord Shiva's help. It's like, there is something about them. They're at that Ishvara level at where we say we have given them a Rupa and Nama because of we need something, we need a form, we need a Saguna Brahman to pray to. So we have given them all these forms and names, but we do understand that there's some power beyond even where
Right.
it's
Correct.
yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Suvarna. So
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukkha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Hari Om. Thank you,